Hey guys, it's Jarek there, Dragon from Red Dragon Airsoft, and we got a review of a very cool, interesting, different style of gun. Now, I'm doing this one, and this is the only video I'm going to make on it because this one is probably one you're not going to take in competition. This is more of one where if you're looking for a different gun, way different than anything you've ever seen before, this is one to look at. You definitely want to try this one out. But I don't see you being able to take it out in a competition just because of how rare it is. So with that said, this is going to be the only thing, although I do have all the specifications, which will be stated in this review. So let's start out with what I'm talking about. This is, oh, and also clarify on the title of this video, I've seen some websites clarifying this is A&K made. This isn't A&K made, this is actually made by JLS. A&K does not make this model. JLS does make this model, however, so a lot of people are kind of misclassifying it. But this is the JLS, and there is no A&K made. That's not necessarily a bad thing, because although JLS gets a lot of flack from people, I've actually found JLS to be a pretty good company if you discount their SCAR. Their FN2000 was the first FN2000, well, F2000, made by FN. It was the first one out of the market, and overall it's pretty much held its weight, and when G&G is making theirs, it basically works the same with some minor improvements. Same thing with their RX-4. Still no one else has an RX-4, and I don't know if anyone else ever will have an RX-4, and they work pretty dang well. So they've been innovative, and they're overall pretty good. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying they're the world's best thing, but for being a Chinese company coming up with their own designs, it's pretty good. So moving on to this review, this one is a clone of something else, however. This is JLS's HK33, or CA33, and they're not cloning Classic Armies or anything, they are cloning KSC's discontinued model, which is a little interesting to say the least. So the box is nothing special, it just says the item number on it, and it's just a cardboard box, really. The instruction manual is it's actually pretty thick. There's lots of Chinglish everywhere. You should expect that out of China. So at one point it said the battery pin rocker or something like that on it. I'm not sure why it says that, but it gives you plenty of pictures to see what you need to do. It comes with some BBs. These aren't necessarily the highest quality BBs. Throw these away. It comes with a speed loader, which you'll need. It comes with a cheap trickle charger. That, at least it has a red on it, but I would recommend using a smart charger. An 8.4 volt battery, I would not recommend using this. 1100 milliamps, 8.4 volt stick type, but I really wouldn't recommend using it because as I was charging this, it actually started fizzing at me. So don't use any of their 8.4 volts or any of the batteries that come in this one, which is kind of a surprise because until now their batteries weren't necessarily the worst of quality, but don't use these. And then you got, well, two styrofoam things, and the gun itself, which actually weighs a little bit more than it looks. Everyone I know that's picked it up has been like, whoa, dang, that's pretty heavy. The reason for that is that there's a lot of metal in this. I actually weighed it and it turned out to be about 7.25 pounds, so this thing's pretty heavy. Also, unjamming rod. Alright, so let's get this box out of the way. At least you got a tiny box, save on shipping. Styrofoam goes everywhere. Alright, so the gun. So you can see, HK33 design, very, very compact, very small. What the HK33 really is a 5.56 model of the G3 to keep it really short. Description? Oh, barrel plug. But short description of it really is just a 5.56 G3. That's really what it is. So let's go over it. Metal and plastic parts. The stock is metal and it is adjustable in 3 different positions. You adjust it by pushing a tab right here and pulling out till it clicks in place. The first position, there's absolutely no wobble whatsoever, and it's the one I would recommend using. It's actually pretty comfortable. The second position has a slight bit of wobble, but it's nothing you can really notice unless you actually try to wobble it. So it's pretty steady, so you don't need to worry about that being wobbly at all. The lower receiver is made by actually a pretty nice fiber plastic. It's actually pretty high quality, surprisingly. The selector switch is metal, although it doesn't really click in place. Just gonna moves, but whatever, it works. It also moves on the other side. Not that, I don't think you guys can see that, but it does move on the other side as well. Show what it is for the left-handed people. The whole upper receiver, though, is metal, and it's not pot metal either. It's actually decently good quality metal. It feels like die-cast metal is what it feels like, which means it's going to be decently heavy too. So along this, over to the magazine, and along here is all die-cast metal, along with the cocking rod and the barrel itself. The flash hider is 14mm counterclockwise, and it is plastic. You'll probably be removing it. Keep in mind this is glued on pretty tightly. You'll have to break that glue seal, which is going to be a little hard. The magazine and the mag release is metal, and the magazine itself is actually stamped steel, which is a pleasant surprise. And the trigger is metal, and I believe that, oh, and the sights are also metal, and I believe that's all the parts. Oh, wait, one more thing. The foregrip is actually ABS plastic. So this thing overall, the whole is built incredibly solid, a lot more solid than I was expecting. You can mount any claw mount you wish onto here. And yeah, those are the externals. They're pretty dang solid. Now here's what's interesting about the gun. This is a clone of KSC's CA33, which works way different than any other AEG I've ever picked up. It's kind of similar to the way Tokyo-Maruri's PSG-1 works. Well, I should say Tokyo-Maruri's PSG-1 works similar to this, since this is an earlier design. But what I mean by that is that the gearbox automatically pulls the spring all the way back. And the trigger, all the trigger does is release the spring. It is not mechanical, it doesn't have any wiring to it. So all it does is release the spring, and then the gearbox automatically pulls it back. So it's definitely interesting, and when you shoot it, it sounds like someone pulled your gearbox inside out and started shooting it. It's really weird sounding. On top of that, there's a power switch on the bottom. Now if you leave that power switch off, you can now use it as a springer. So as a whole, this thing works way different than anything else I've ever picked up, and I wanted to get something new, something interesting, and I can tell you, I found it. This thing is really, really odd with the way it works. And since KSC's was discontinued, this is really the only one you're going to be able to find. Alright, so let's go ahead and put the battery in. How you put the battery in is you pull the stock off, which is pretty simple. Simply remove one pin and the whole stock comes off. Where you put the battery, and you're kind of limited to only an 8.4 volt, however I would recommend getting a 7.4 volt LiPo, a stick type, and putting it right in here. The connection itself is actually inside the stock as itself. So there's no wiring to get in the way, which is actually a really good design. Most companies should do that. So I got an 8.4 volt battery here. It's mostly charged. There we go. Let me go ahead and plug this one in here. It's really hard to do at this angle. There we go, it's plugged in. Then all you got to do is, oh, and by the way, the fuse itself is right in the back here as well. So the fuse is really accessible. Let's go ahead and put this back in here. There we go, put the stock back on, which just slides right on. And then you take the pin, goes in on this side, take the pin and push it in. And there you go, your stock's back on and it is steady. So let me go ahead and show you what I mean by this thing sounds incredibly weird when you're shooting it. So there's a switch on the bottom right here. When you're done shooting this, you want to turn this off and release the spring, otherwise it'll be cocked pretty much all the time, and that will eventually lead to spring getting weaker and the gun actually ending up breaking because of the weird design. So keep that in mind. But you'll hear it when I push the switch, it'll automatically pull the spring back. It sounds weird. So let's go semi-automatic. Like I said, it sounds like nothing else I've ever shot before. It sounds inside out. Or like someone took the way the gearbox sounds and played it in reverse or something. So that's semi-automatic, and as you can see, the trigger, when I pull the trigger, it's automatic. It shoots and then it pulls the spring back. So there's a giant advantage to that. I did read somewhere someone saying the spring or the trigger was a really hard trigger pull. I haven't really found that to be true. It's actually pretty easy for me. So trigger is overall pretty easy. But let's go full auto. And may I remind you, this is only an 8.4 volt stick type that's almost fully charged. And the semi-automatic thing doesn't really matter in this one, because if you turn the power off and release the spring, you get full decompression of the spring. So you'll never have that slowly kind of wear down on feet per second. And speaking of feet per second, this gun shoots around 300 feet per second. So it's respectable, it's nothing too strong, and it shoots around, when I chronoed it shot around 700 rounds a minute, 680 to 700 rounds a minute. It doesn't shoot the fastest in the world. It's definitely a little bit below average when you're shooting it, but it's enough to use. And I'll show you, pull the power button and full decompression. So it's pretty cool, very cool design. This thing, like I said, is nothing like I've ever shot in before. I don't know any other AEGs that sound, look, work, or anything like this, really, when it comes straight down to it. This is very, very interesting, and if you want something that's different than anything else, this is one way to look. Like I mentioned, the magazine is only compatible with this kind of CA33. It won't work with the Classic Army CA33 magazines, just this design. So you're going to have to find KSC or JLS magazines, which are a little bit hard to find. They are made of stamped steel, and they are mid-caps. I think it only held somewhere close to, I think, 40 rounds. Didn't hold too much, so you'll want to find some extra magazines if you can. The way you put it in is kind of like an AK. You got to rock it in. Something interesting to point out, this gun actually does a little bit of trademarks. It says caliber 5.56 by 45 millimeter, which is the bullet size. And over here it says safe E and F, which would be what's on the HK33 for safe, semi, and full auto. Also on the sights, which are pretty standard MP5 barrel and drum sights, you can see you can fully adjust them just by twisting this. So that's how you adjust them, and then the front's a standard post. So that's pretty stereotypical. And then there's one more surprise with the way it works. This one's very interesting. But to get to the Hopup unit, which is definitely a little weird, you don't pull this back. Obviously, it doesn't pull the bolt back. The bolt is kind of molded into the gun like the early MP5s were. To get to the Hopup unit, you push out the front pin here and take that off. The Hopup unit itself is right here, and I'm going to zoom in so you guys can really see this. So here it is. This is the Hopup unit right here. It's adjustable by twisting this little thing. You can hear it clicks into place. I found it to actually be a pretty decent Hopup unit. It actually works pretty well, and the accuracy is actually somewhat good. So let's put this back together now. All you got to do is slide the foregrip back on. Push the pin back in. It sounds like more work than it really is. It's pretty simple to access. Like I said, the Hopup unit's pretty good. I was able to get accuracy at about, say, 100 to 130 feet. Around there is where I was able to get accuracy, but only shooting at 300 feet per second. It's kind of harder to get a little bit further ranges. Either way, the Hopup unit, I was decently surprised by it, and the accuracy is overall pretty good. You're not supposed to be expecting anything way over the top with a different design like this that overall got discontinued. I was just expecting something not as good, but I actually got something that was pretty decent and very, very interesting. So, like I said, 150 feet, you're not going to be able to hit your target. It's going to start kind of trailing off. The accuracy won't be good enough to hit it there. But the accuracy definitely will be good enough to hit your target at about 100 feet to 120 feet. So, overall, it's decently good for, you know, the barrel being from there to there and the Hopup unit being a little bit odd. Although I could say everything about this gun works odd. really odd. So I'm going to shoot this just dry fire it a little bit more just so you guys can hear, again, what it sounds like pushing the switch. So really different, really interesting design when it comes straight down to it. Something to mention, when you just get this out of the box, clean the barrel. Because when I got this, the barrel was literally so dirty it couldn't even fire. The gun would either just jam or the BBs would just drop out of the barrel. That's how dirty it was. I had to clean it about a good 7 times before it actually was finally clean. So you have a lot of grease through this barrel before you're actually able to use the gun. So keep that in mind. Although I guess you should expect that from a Chinese company. But there was a lot. It was coated. Either way, it'll shoot fine once you clean out the barrel. So, I was looking for an interesting, different gun. I believe I've covered everything on it. I got what I was looking for. I was looking for something that was definitely different. And this is definitely different. Again, this is a clone of KFC's original, like a discontinued, now made by JLS. It's decently hefty. Overall, pretty good. I don't see you ever using this in a competition because it uses its own design. Everything about this is just for this gun. It's not compatible. It's not Tokyo Marui compatible. None of the parts will work with Tokyo Marui guns that are compatible with Tokyo Marui. Everything is specific to this. So finding magazines will be a little bit hard, and finding internal parts will be a little bit hard. However, if you fully decompress the spring every single time, it's going to be pretty hard for you to break this gun. I don't see you doing that. But if you don't decompress it, you'll probably end up breaking something inside the gearbox. So decompress the spring fully, turn off the power switch, pull the trigger, and fully decompress the spring. Something else I almost forgot to say, with this gun, because of the weird way it works, when your battery is almost dead, you'll start to think that your gun is broken. Your gun will not be broken. What will happen when your battery is almost dead is it will pull the spring most of the way back, but not all the way back. So when you go to pull the trigger, it'll be stuck. Don't try to force the trigger, you'll break it. What you need to do is just charge the battery again. That's all you need to do. You can pull the rod all the way back, and then shoot it and decompress it. Well, after pushing the spring, just decompress the spring, go to charge your battery. That's all you need to do. So if it pulls the spring almost all the way back, it'll sound like it pulled it all the way back, but if your trigger won't move, you'll need to go charge the battery. So no, it's not broken, you just almost have a dead battery. So if you want to buy this gun, it is for sale. I didn't get it for a collector purpose. If you want to buy this gun, there's a link below me. If you want to be the only one around your area with this thing, go ahead and buy it. Link below me to Red Dragon Airsoft's website. There's also a link below me to RDAF forum where you can talk to the community. So with that said, that has been Red Dragon Airsoft's review of the JLS HK33.